just to give you an idea, so my income from the short-term rental compared to the long-term rental on a monthly income is almost triple. So I get at least double when I account for what I made on it as a long-term rental, plus the utilities that I have to pay myself. Because now I'm paying the electric and the gas, landscape and stuff like that. I'm still tripling that number on a short-term rental.
What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host
Emanuele Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Short-Term Rental Secrets. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emanuele Pani. What's going on, E?
What's happening, brother? How's life?
We're back, is good, man.
We're back.
This is it. Everything's opening back up. It's 80 degrees and sunny here on the beach in Massachusetts, which is fantastic. And getting ready to open up this hotel in about 10 days, which I am so pumped for. It's been a long time. We're there. So
yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, things down here in Florida are looking kind of the same. Things are kind of going back to normal. A little slower than I thought was going to happen, but at least, it is what it is. But like we talked about last week, reservations are coming in. People are itching to travel. People are itching to do whatever they need to do. So I mean, it seems like this thing is over. So let's keep our fingers crossed and let's see what happens. But I am super excited for today's episode with our friend Bernie. I love that name too. So how are you, Bernie? Welcome.
Yes. Good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So Bernie, A.K.A. the Airbnb guy of Ohio, he is a host and a co-host. He has a bunch of short-term rental properties. So he kind of has a blend, right? He was a traditional real estate investor, buy and hold long-term leases. And then he and I met about 9 months ago or so. He ended up getting into my mastermind program, and he converted one of his long-term rentals into a short-term rental. And now he has another co-host client that he manages for an investor, and he's got 5 more opportunities that he's currently looking at. He's been in real estate for about 30 years with 4 long-term rentals, as well as ownership interest in 79 apartment doors. And welcome to the show, buddy. I'm happy to have you here.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah. So you want to, I guess, kind of take us back to where you were before you and I met, and what kind of triggered you to start considering, the short-term rental model, since you've been a long-term, buy and hold investor for, I think, 30 years, you said. So
AKA, what brought you to the dark side? How did that happen?
Well, so a couple things happened. First, I've had a range of long-term rentals. I've had up to 10 properties at once that I managed. At one point, I had 10 properties, single-family homes, and a small commercial building. And as I've kind of moved them around, more recently, the last 5 that I had some really long-term tenants in there, like 7 to 11 years.
Oh wow!
And they had like a rent-to-own clause in their lease, and 3 of them came up to me last year at the same time and all wanted to buy. So I was thinking I'm going to have a big capital gain situation. So I actually started researching what to buy next, and I went into apartment buildings. But Mike knew some people, Jamie, if you guys know him. So Jamie had Mike on as a guest, and I watched the webinar, and I'm like, well, I think that sounds really good. I had been talking to one of my tenants who I incidentally got into real estate, and she told me that she had a couple of clients doing real well with Airbnb. So I said I wanted to try it, and I actually ended up having to ask a tenant to leave on good terms so that I can turn a property to Airbnb. And and everything that Mike said in the course was all that and more. so that, you know, my income, even like from the very first month, which I expected to be low, was much higher than expected. So then I wanted to do it as a co-host, and then, you know, we worked through my goals, and that's how I come up with a big aggressive goals for lots of co-host properties.
Awesome.
I love that. So I guess just to give it a little context too, Bernie, because you've been a longtime real estate investor, but you also have a full-time job, right? So I think one of the big misconceptions that a lot of folks have is, oh, I don't have time to do short-term rentals because it sounds like it's way too much work. And I don't think I could possibly balance, you know, a family, a full-time job, and then running this other business on the side. So can you kind of give a little context on what your day-to-day and how many hours a week you think you're putting into that business to run it?
So to run, let's see. So when it was just my one single house that I owned, I was probably putting anywhere from 3 to 4 hours a week. I was still learning the business. And most of that was, you know, just, we're living in a wonderful age of apps. So most of that was on the apps, you know, on the apps of, you know, looking at the cameras, looking at the August lock for the doors, texting back and forth to the guests. And eventually when I got my messages to the guests dialed down, most of the messages are now automated with Smart B&B. So I started that property in August of last year. And literally I've had to go back to the property 3 times. The rest of it has been just on the app. The 3 times, if that property wasn't my own, I would have just sent a handyman to do the things that I went back there to do. And it was mostly just curiosity to see how people left it and how some work was done. But it's pretty hands off that I don't have to have that many visits to the week. On the co-host, once you know, I sign up a co-host, and again, I get maybe, now I'm dialed in, so I get maybe an hour to an hour and a half a week that I'm talking to the potential guests. And I started that property in the end of February, and I have not been back to it since we got it all set up. So that one's done all remotely. That one's almost an hour away from me, so it's not as easy to run up there. But I literally, if I need something done, I just have my cleaners do it, or I have them take pictures and relay me back the information. So it's pretty easy going. Mike, you were asking, you know, how do you juggle it with a full-time job? So I got a couple of things. I know my cleaners are always going to be in there between like noon and 2, right? So in that 2-hour range, I can plan to expect to communicate with them, and that's kind of like around my lunch hour from the regular job and all that. And then most of the guest communication is in the evening. You know, that's when they're coming in. That's where they're checking in. And incidentally, that's when most of them make the reservations, because most people that are traveling, you know, they're making their reservations and they're asking their questions after hours from their job. So I would say 90% of my guest communications is between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock p.m. And all my cleaner communications is between 12 and 2.
That's interesting, 'cause I never thought about that, but now that I think about it, the guest communication is kind of between that time, at least through Airbnb, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does that, so now that you have kind of got some experience with the short-term rental game, and you still have your experience from your long-term rental game, what did you like from each? Like where do you see yourself going next? Are you going to keep a hybrid of the two? Are you going to stay in apartment syndication for the long-term stuff, and then your personal thing is going to be Airbnbs, or now that you got kind of like a little bit?
Good question. Of
a taste,
so,
you know?
Apartment syndication, well, I'll take that one first. So that's my long-term goal, right? I'm getting old, and when I'm too old to use an app or answer the phone, then, you know, hopefully that income will be coming in, and that's also part of the, you know, the legacy I'll leave for my son. With the long-term rental properties, at this point, I only want to have them long-term rentals until the current tenant leaves, and then they're all going to become short-term rentals. So
Awesome.
unless something changes in those markets, definitely short-term rentals is the way to go for me in the market that I am in Ohio. Just to give you an idea, so my income from the short-term rental compared to the long-term rental on a monthly income is almost triple. So I get at least double when I account for what I made on it as a long-term rental, plus the utilities that I have to pay myself. Because now I'm paying the electric and the gas, landscape and stuff like that. I'm still tripling that number on a short-term rental. So, and mostly, and we haven't really hit the summer, right? I had fall, which was pretty good, winter, which was stable for me, and summer looked to be pretty good until COVID kind of hit getting into it. So I'm going 2 to 3x on the income from each property, even with the situation that we have now. So I'm anticipating it to be a little bit more. So if my long-term tenants move out, we have immediate plans to turn them into an Airbnb right away. And we can do that now. The first one took like 3 to 4 weeks to get it converted, but I'm pretty confident that, now if we know that the date the tenant's leaving, we can pre-order everything and we can get it turned around in probably 7 to 10 days, maybe even shorter.
Yeah. Those turnovers get faster and faster every single time. So is this something that you have a big team that is helping you? And when you refer to we, like, do you make your little son work? Like, what does your team look like? Like, who's involved?
I try to make my little son work. That right. Has not panned out just yet, but I'll let you know how that goes. But my wife does help also. So she's my backup especially if there's any guest communication when I'm either busy with my primary job or if I'm sleeping, because she's a night owl and I get up early, so I go to bed usually by 11. I'm in bed, so anything that's coming in after 10:30, she usually takes those messages and replies to them. And that's really it. I'm probably 80-20 with the amount of work I do and the amount of work she does. And everything else is pretty much the cleaners. And the team of cleaners, I have really one primary for mine, and I have 2 others for the co-host. The co-host, I have a cleaner that she actually owns a cleaning company, so she's the primary cleaner on it. But she has backups that are available. If she can't do it herself, she can send a team over. And if for any reason she can't, I actually have another cleaner, which I got from one of the apps. I forget the name of the app. What's the app for the cleaners? Because I only use it once. Turnover B&B. So I actually have like 3 or 4 that I'm in contact with on that app. But really, there's one that I used, and she did a fantastic job, and I have her on as backup. And I'll try to give her at least one a month, just to kind of keep her in the role. But not a big team, to answer your question.
Yeah. No, and I like that because my goal with my question, it's kind of, I'm going through all the things that have happened in the past and all the questions that we had in the past, right? So you addressed the first one, which is like, can I do this with a job? Yes. Do I need a big team to do it? No. Does it take a bunch of hours? Not really. Can my wife or family be there to support me and help me? It's pretty easy, right? Like you have the Airbnb app on the iPad, whoever catches it and kind of answers to it. So I love that.
And really, most of the time, even like the late night, I think people are reasonable. They know they're coming into this time zone. So if they're asking a question and they know it's after midnight, they may not necessarily expect an answer right away. But if they do, it makes it all that much better. It gives them. We're always working on that customer satisfaction. We want them to be very happy. We answer all our texts with, we hope you have a 5-star stay. So that by the time they stay, they've listened to that, at least they've read it and listened to it 20 times. So they put 5 stars.
That's so smart.
A little NLP mixed in there.
Yeah, right. I'm going to write that down.
So Bernie, just to give the listeners a little more context too, and we don't have to go deep on this, but a lot of people think, oh man, like there's going to be a ton of communication. Like, again, it's going to be a ton of work, but with the systems that we use, right? Like you mentioned that you're building up your automated messages, right? So the system that you and I use and our students use, right? It has artificial intelligence built into it. So you can start to see what types of questions you get asked more often, right? If it's a question about the pool hours or parking or things like that, you can pre-program it to detect, oh, this is a question about the pool. and it'll automatically send a response for that. So like as you said, over time, you can start to build up a database of these questions to continue to systematize and automate your business. Because again, the primary goal as an investor is to become financially free, which means you're not trading time for money. So,
right.
If you're working 4 hours a week, I consider that fairly passive, right? But if you don't have the right systems in place, this could quickly become a full-time job. And I see a lot of old school vacation rental managers get burnt out because they don't have the right systems.
Yeah. And for those listening, something to remember is that he said it used to take him 3 to 4 hours a week at the beginning, right? Now we're more in the hour and a half a week.
Right. Yep.
Which, I mean, most people spend 5-6 times that just catching up on shows, right? So it's really not that much time when you look in the great scheme of like how many hours you have in a week for making 3 times as much income as you would on a long-term rental. So another question that I often get from people is, well, the wear and tear on the property is going to be a lot worse, right? Because there's people coming in and out. What has your experience been with that? Like, has your experience been most people come and completely like wreck the place, or like my experience, 97% of people are actually awesome, and then you get the occasional kind of bad apple?
I'm definitely in the 99% of the people have been awesome.
Yeah.
We've only had 2 people that did any kind of damage at all, and it was very, very minor, and only because we're kind of perfectionists, so we set up everything to be kind of perfect before we made it into an Airbnb. So, and I'll give you some scenarios. We had one guy that he got frustrated trying to get in late at night because of certain adult beverages he was drinking and couldn't figure out how to get in, and he kicked the door. And we addressed it with him. We're like, look, we have video of what happened last night, and you kicked the door, and we just need to repaint it. And we sent him a small bill, and he paid it right away, no issues. And then we had another one where they in the basement, there's like the poles for the basement, and they just like wrote on the pole. So it wasn't really a big deal, but it was just kind of a matter of principle. So we sent them a bill for just repainting the pole. Again, it was a very small bill because it was just a pole to be repainted. And those guys actually, they didn't want to pay it, but Airbnb actually stepped in and sent me a message, says we see that you have an interaction with your guest about some damage they did, and you're asking for this amount of money, and they just sent it to me. So it was very easy. And the property now is in just as good a condition as day one that we rented it out. Let me put it as an Airbnb. And compared to my experience with the long-term rentals, almost every long-term rental I've had to at least paint and refloor or carpet after the guests. Even if they're in there, for 3 to 6 months on a lease, they usually just trash and get it so dirty that is beyond cleaning. So the shape of the property is definitely much, much better.
Yeah. And where in Ohio are you?
I am in a small town called Medina, Ohio, which is about 30, 45 minutes south of Cleveland.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's been my experience too, right? Every time that I have to rent to long-term people, it's just such a pain because every time they leave is a complete mess.
Right.
And even the great people, like I have great people, but still, like after a year or two of living in a house with kids, every wall has fingerprints, which is amazing. Even parts of the ceiling that like, I don't know how the kids get to it, but somehow there's fingerprints up there. So it's completely different.
Yeah. And, like we updated the appliances just because we wanted nice new ones in there. Mm-hmm. And our first 3-4 months, nobody used any of the appliances. Then we had like around Christmas time, we had some more longer term stays because people came for Christmas and for the holidays and for New Year's, and had small families. So then there was some evidence of cooking, but I mean, the appliances are still a wipe down away from looking brand spanking new, and now they're going on a year old.
Yep. Everything is better. Yeah. I have people that come down to Florida. All my snowbirds come down to Florida. I don't think The only thing they make in the morning is a little bagel. All my New Yorkers, they just put a bagel in the thing, so they use the toaster. But that's about it. They don't really use anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
we-
you need
we-
to have it because it's so funny.
Yeah.
People want it just because they want to be able to use it. But most of the time they don't actually use it. But again, it's definitely an advantage of the short-term rentals over the hotels, right? Because you get in a whole home plus a kitchen. So you can fit a bigger family and they can cook their meals at home if they want. And it's just way more, quite frankly, economical for most people. So Bernie, one thing I want to transition to that you and I have been working on a lot, and Ian and I have talked about this quite a bit on the podcast, is keeping a positive mindset and how that actually translates into results. Because I know for you, you've been doing a lot of mindset stuff work with me and some key things with that. And you're consistently, even throughout this whole COVID thing, you are still consistently generating new properties and new leads every single week. And I want to just talk about that because I feel like we've talked about it conceptually, but you've been doing it and seeing the fruits of that. So you want to just kind of touch on the power of that and some of the results that you're getting, even during this crazy global pandemic that was going on?
Sure. So, I mean, mindset is definitely important. We've talked about the book Think and Grow Rich, and I've read that, and in my career I've read it several times before and went through it again. Yes, so and review it every day. And the mindset is, I was going through Craigslist, now I'm going through HotPads, and I'm always looking for new landlords or investors, and I kind of classify them a little bit differently because the investors tend to have multiple properties, which is a better hit for me if somebody has more than one property. Eventually we can do 2 or 3 or 4 of their properties as opposed to one property that my own. The mindset is that not everybody's going to say yes, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I guess the world would be pretty boring if everybody just said yes to me all the time, right? Maybe not, but it probably would be. So I know I'm going to get a couple of no's. I'm going to get a couple of yeses. And really, I look at the big picture. You only need a couple of yeses. If you make 100 calls in a month, if you get 2 or 3 yeses, that's enough. That's really enough. And it keeps your business going forward. And sometimes it gets to be like, I don't want to say a game, but like you're playing a numbers game where if I'm not getting a good feeling about a particular property, I might just go ahead with it anyway, because I know I need 3 or 4 no's today before I get my yes. So as I'm getting that no, I know that I'm preparing for another yes. But I've also had them where I misread the situation at first, so I stay just as positive and friendly on that no. But sometimes something good might come out of it. Sometimes it's a referral, like, no, I don't really want to do that, but I know a guy who's tired of dealing with long-term tenants because they always trash this place, or no, it's not for me, but I might do that on another property that I'm looking to buy. So there's a lot of different things that come out of it, and each person has an experience, and maybe it's like, no right now. Because maybe he'll get that next long-term tenant in and they'll trash the place. Instead of being there for a year, they're there for 3 months, and then he might call me. So, I'll keep those guys on my tickler. But it's definitely a good idea to keep a positive mindset.
So, Bernie, were you born with a positive mindset?
No, I was actually, we have a joke going on. We're very close friends of Mr. Murphy because anything that can and should go wrong will. But, it just, our motto in our family is you either win or you learn. So if it doesn't go your way, you've learned something. We've had some real estate deals go bad, and we've learned a lot from those. We've had a lot of real estate deals go well, and we just make some money. But when they go bad, you learn a lot. And what you learn in those bad deals helps you later on in the future and setting up the next deal to be a little bit smoother.
Yeah, I love that. And that's where we're all very similar, right? And that's kind of been ingrained in our brain from all the personal development books, but I think mostly from life experience, right? Because when you start really embracing that mindset, you're not really freaking out about anything, right? Like everything is fine. Because then I either win or I learn. So there is really no negative aspect kind of to it. And you just hit the nail on the head also when you're like, it's a numbers game, right? Like, fuck, life is fun. You might have to change your perspective to see the fun in it. But if you can do that, life is easy, right? It's all about the choices you make, right? How we're going to see this. It's a game and you're just going for it. And you're just like, I need one more. When I used to prospect for real estate a lot. And every time I was like, I get a shitty phone call, my thing was like, I want to quit. I'm like, just one more. And just getting in the habit of like, when you're feeling in a certain way, just one more, because every no gets you closer to that yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that.
That's why I love this podcast, because we subtly blend in personal development with short-term rentals. Because quite frankly, we can give you guys all the tools to the technical of like, go out, here's how to prospect, here's how to furnish, here's how to run them. But if you don't have the right mindset, your self-doubt won't even let you get started. And if you do get started, if you don't have the right mindset and you do have an issue that comes up, you're going to quit. Right.
Yeah.
So we do like to blend in both, because it's so crucial. No matter what business you're in, you need to have the right mindset. And then you obviously need to know the specialized knowledge to take it and move forward with it. So,
and I think going back to all the greats, right? That's what makes all the difference, right? Going back to Kobe, like what made Kobe was his mindset, right? What made Jordan is his mindset. What makes Tiger Woods is his mindset. Is there other golfers that have just as good of a swing? Probably, most likely. But it doesn't mean shit. Like we can all learn, but that's the thing, right? We can all go to school. We all learn from the same thing. But if you're not equipped yourself with like what you need for the long term, you can know everything and do absolutely nothing, you know? And it's huge for like you guys with kids too, right? Like I think that's such a good value to show your kids. There's like, first of all, you'll never fail in life. You're either going to win or learn. And then as long as your head is positive and you're in a good space, just be a good person, be friendly, smile. You'll get your yes, whatever it is, right?
I love
It's
that.
huge.
So Bernie, one thing like that we like to do with all the guests is ask them, what is your number one secret or tip for somebody that's new and wants to get in the game, or somebody that might be struggling right now? Like what's one secret or one tip that you have for those people?
Well, you didn't prepare me for that one.
No, I want to hear it off the cuff.
Off the
I
cuff,
want to hear it off the cuff.
Well, I definitely think, thinking of the majority of people that I've dealt with that always say, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. And get rid of the fear of failure and just do it. And I don't want to be like a Nike guy and just do it, because I'm going to, but it's just do it, because like, I know some people that want to do something in getting out on their own, but they're afraid of taking that first step because they might fail. And I tell them, yeah, you might fail. You probably will fail, and you have to fail a bunch of times to learn. But don't let that stop you. Don't get that analysis paralysis, and just go out there and do it. Try. It's good to get educated so that you minimize your mistakes. I mean, luckily, knock on wood, I haven't failed in Airbnb because I had a great teacher and I learned as much as I could before going into it. But they're just being prepared. Was I afraid to fail? I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'm going to put my listing up and nobody will reserve it. Well, as you know, Mike, I pre-listed it and I had bookings all the way through December back in August, and we weren't even really done. We're still waiting for a couch, and we're paranoid that the couch is not going to come in on time for our first guest. So it's just a matter of going out there and doing it. And even when my wife and I, when we looked at Mike's program, and I watched it and then I had her watch it, she's like, well, what if this and what if that and what if that? And I'm like, what if? Then we just put somebody back in there for $600 a month. It's not a big deal. The house will be just that much nicer. And luckily we didn't have to go back to that. And now instead of getting $600 a month, we're getting anywhere from $1,900 to $2,600 for a very tiny place. Very tiny place. It's just literally like a 1-bedroom house. And I don't know, was that too long for the one takeaway, Mike?
No, that was perfect.
Perfect. Also, because you give all the perspective and all the possibilities of what could happen, right?
Yep.
And that was a big conversation that we recorded an episode last week, kind of updating post COVID, right? And all the people that we know that were able to, they were able to make it are all those people that were able to adjust. And that's what you just talked about, right? Like, you're going to do this, you have a property, you're going to do all the furnishing and everything else. Worst comes to worst, you're renting a place that's furnished, right?
Yep.
You're still going to get a little bit more money. And that's it. Like, nothing, right? Like, the worst case, who's that quote from? Like, you're going to worry about a lot of things in your life. Most of them are never even going to come through. Like, that's this game doesn't change. Like, that's kind of the same thing.
Well, I'll throw one other thing in because you mentioned about being post-COVID, and one of the things my co-host, he was worried about if we can, when he was giving me the property, because he had it hosted by someone else before, and he was worried, if I would do as good a job and could get the money that he was getting with the other people. Mm-hmm. And we signed everything at the end of February, and we put it live, and COVID hit. But with all the things that were Mike's course, with all the things that I learned, and with all the tweaks we did to the listing, that listing was coming up first. So the first month we were like right in COVID, and the market rate and this is in Cleveland, the occupancy rate was 3.9%. Like, that's nothing. And we had 20%. That's what he was getting before COVID. The second month it got a little bit better. The Cleveland market was at 9.7%, and we were at 30%, and we over doubled what his average was for the last 3 years pre-COVID. Because we were attracting the different markets. The travelers, the people coming in, the essential workers coming in, and we had teams, and we positioned the listing to be forefront from those, and we did some tweaks about how we disinfect everything between each thing. So we did so many things in there that I learned from Mike's course, and also from the mastermind, because like some of the ideas were from the mastermind as we were discussing it, that it actually worked out better. You asked me if I was being an optimist and being always positive. It's like, no, but I listened to what they had to say. I tried it, and it worked. Where all the other negative minds in the market were saying, oh, COVID, nothing's happening. So they let their listings go gray, and they didn't do anything with them, and there's nothing to make it shine.
Beautiful. The silver lining right there.
Yep.
And they're being humble, right? That's another thing that came through for me with what you said. As long as you're humble, like Mike and I are going to be fucking students for the rest of our life. Because it's just how we take it, right? Like, that's just, I don't know how else to fucking function, right? Like, I have 5 books at any given time open with like bookmarks and shit in it, and that's just how we run it, because we know nothing, and the less we know, the better we do.
Yep.
Because you adjust and you do whatever you need to do, and then you take, maybe Mike from a past life has a little tip that you didn't think about that makes perfect sense, but you don't know what you don't know, right?
Love that. So I want to wrap things up, Bernie. I want to thank you for your time, and I also want to let the listeners know, like, where can they get in touch with you? How can they reach out to you, whether they're active in the Airbnb game or whether they're investors and landlords that are looking for somebody like you to take their property and run it to the next level, or just people that just have questions in general. Where can people get in contact with you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at the Airbnbguy Ohio, or you can look me up on Facebook, Bernie Cesareo, last name Cesareo, and I'm always answering messages.
And you got a new blog, right?
And I got a new blog, yes. And the blog address is in my Instagram, so if you go into the Instagram, you can click on a link, and it'll take you right to my blog.
That's awesome.
Love it. Well, thank you for coming on here, man. I really appreciate your time. And, you're essentially the perfect student, right? Like you come in, you take action, you learn, you adjust, you pivot, and you just keep things moving, and you always keep a positive mindset. And, the results are showing, and they'll continue to show because you're out there doing this thing. And I just want to give you kudos and thank you again for coming on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hats off to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Definitely.
I appreciate it, and I'm a good student because you guys are good teachers, you know, and you hit it right on the head. You know, it's continuous learning. The best student is the one who wants to learn, right? So I got my audio books going, I got my regular books going. You know, I got another book over there. So just like you, I have book another one, 3 books in one desk.
Yeah, perfect.
So,
That's how we roll.
so thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Good being on with you guys.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.